Welcome to Undercurrents of Romance, the show that celebrates every subgenre of romantic fiction. In each episode, I peel back the layers of your favorite love stories and chat with the talented authors who bring them to life. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn. Now, let's dive in with today's guest. Hello, Romantics. Today we're doing something a little bit different as part of my Life as a series. Every so often, I'll sit down with a publishing professional and chat with them about how they contribute to the publication of a book. Today, I'm featuring my longtime copy editor, Martha Trachtenberg. Welcome, Martha.
It's a pleasure, Tracy. It's great to actually see you. This
I know
is so much fun. I feel like a
it
kid in a
is.
candy store. It's like, oh, look, it works.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. I know we were going to try and get together in New York last summer when I was there for
Yeah.
a conference, and our schedules didn't quite work out. So I'm hoping that we can actually do that
Yes,
this year because I'll be there again. So fingers crossed, all of that'll work out.
absolutely. We'll make it.
So
We
I
will make it so.
we will make it so absolutely. I looked it up just to be sure, and you have copy edited every one of my books going back to my very first self-published or indie published book, Night Storm, which I published this back in 2014. So you have you have copy edited every one of my books plus the Steel Ridge series, and there are what 30 some books in that
I
series.
lost count. I lost track. All I know is that the Bible for that series is
Yes.
book length all by itself.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think we can say that we are in a committed relationship at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, I can't deny it. I don't know which one of us should be committed, but yeah, it's fun.
It
It
is.
really is.
It has been a great time, and I've said this to you before, but I just can't imagine publishing a book without your help, and you've saved me from many embarrassing moments inside my books, and so I appreciate you so much.
I'm, it's when there's a Devlin book in the calendar, it's like, yes, something to look forward to. So
Oh,
you're
good.
very welcome, and thank you for bringing me in for that whole Steel Ridge series. Who
Uh,
knew
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that initial trilogy would expand
Right.
like
We
that?
didn't. We didn't. We were as surprised as you.
That'll teach you.
So, yeah, exactly, right?
But I mean, those characters became so real. I still remember arguing with you about killing one of them. I saved a fictional
You you
character's
did.
life.
I caved. You helped save the character and she's very
I
happy for
did. It was like,
it.
no, we don't have to kill her. We could just knock her out.
Yeah, it would be interesting if people read, I think that was Roaming Wild, uh when I had the botanist, and
Yes.
so
Yes.
it'll be interesting to see if people can identify the person that you saved near the greenhouse.
I became invested in
You
these people,
were, you were. Yeah, and
so
that's something you've mentioned, time and again when going through this about how much and how invested you are, and how you enjoy. So it's I think that's really good for our viewers and listeners to hear, is that you as a copy editor really love these characters and can get invested in the series, and you want it to be as successful as the author that you're helping out. So I think that's
oh,
great.
thank you. I see my role as your backstop. It's like I don't want to leave anything in there that you're going to get criticized for. If they don't
And
like
I
the story, they don't like the story, but I'm not going to leave them cheap shots.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
It's like
Believe me. I
it's a
absolutely
freedom.
appreciate that. Well, Martha, why don't you get us started? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into copy editing, if you don't mind.
Sideways. I spent all of my life prior to that being a musician. I was a touring musician. And then I got off the road and I was living in New York and sang jingles for a while. And then I stopped being flavor of the month. and had a baby who is now 6'6" and bends over to rest his chin on top of my head. Uh, and I needed work that I could do at home and at weird hours to accommodate that. I had always been a reader. Uh, from day one, I grew up in a house surrounded by books. There were books in every room, save the dining room, but it was books everywhere. So I thought maybe I can get work as a proofreader. And I had a friend who was a writer, and she introduced me to someone at Knopf who listened to my questions very graciously and said, okay, you really need someone who is a mentor, basically, to get into this. And I am not that kind of person, but there's a woman at Times Books who might be perfect. And she introduced me to her, and she became my fairy godmother. I talked with her, and she said, do you see typos? I see them everywhere. And she said, good, you either see them or you don't. That can't be
Yeah.
taught. She said, go out and get this book, do all the exercises, call me when you're done. And I did. It was called Mark My Words. Um, and it was a humbling experience as I went through all the exercises and realized how much I had missed and did not know. But that was great. And I called her, and sure enough, she gave me a job to go
Uh.
through. And so I did it. And then she gave me another one. And then she gave me another one. And after a while, I was working for her steadily. And then finally one day, proofreaders are only supposed to make notes about discrepancies between the original and the galleys. This is back in the days of paper galleys.
Mhm.
And, typographical weirdness like stacks of words or whatever. You're not supposed to ask questions. I asked questions. It's like, but this contradicts what was said on the first
Yeah.
chapter,
Yeah.
things like that. And my fairy godmother finally said, all the questions you ask are copy editor's questions. You may as well get paid for it. And poof, she made me a copy editor. And then I took her class at NYU, night classes.
Uh,
And I was launched.
yeah.
But I started in all nonfiction. And it was Times Books was at Random House, and it was on the same floor as Ballantine. Uh,
Okay.
and I wound up getting a little work for Ballantine, and then gradually started getting more fiction work. So but in the beginning, I did the history of beer in America, followed by the history of Ruger guns. At which point my husband said, so in other words, you can go out and get drunk and shoot someone and know exactly what you're doing. And I said, yes. So,
Uh,
so uh, I I love it. I do.
good.
And I am a researcher. I used to research books for writers, so it was automatic to me. If there are facts in the book, you check. That
Mhm.
was one thing Nancy, my mentor, told me. She said, check everything at first, and then you
Mhm.
find the area of the author's weakness, and that's what you check for the rest of the book.
Ah, interesting.
I mean, they have their areas of expertise in areas where they're guessing or they're guests.
Yeah.
So I have more flotsam and random jetsam in my brain than you would believe, especially after doing a trivia encyclopedia.
Oh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not realize the breadth of your experience. For whatever reason, I had it in my head you have always been a fiction copy editor. I didn't
No.
realize. Yeah.
And how did I get into romance? Um, Tessa Dare. Tessa Dare did a book for, I think it was Ballantine,
Mm.
and I was assigned to her as her copy editor. And I came to find out that she was one of a group of friends who were writers who were having their first books published at the same time.
Mm.
And a lot of them were really unhappy with the copy editors who were assigned to them. And she was very happy, thank goodness. So she started recommending me to her
Mm,
friends who were indie writers and who needed to hire their own copy editors. And the thing is that before reading her book, I had not read a romance since I had tried one Georgette Heyer in high school,
mm.
where the height of passion was a stolen kiss at midnight, fully clothed. Imagine my surprise.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's like, they can say this? They really? And by the time I'd done a number of them, it was like, just make sure your shoes are off, please. So
Yeah.
it's fun. You never know what random area of expertise you're going to encounter. Or,
Hmm.
I mean, I wound up with an awful lot of terms for Regency clothing and carriages, and accoutrement when I was doing a lot of
Hmm.
historicals.
Yeah, yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, a
I do.
lot to learn. It's with the Regencies and the historicals. I remember
Oh,
whenever I
yeah.
first started reading them as a pure reader, I'm like, is this true? Or it is a fiction book. Is this true? Is this? But there is a lot of history in those
Yes.
books. Yeah.
Yes, it's extraordinary. But dealing with the names, the
Hmm.
English nobility names,
Yeah.
you would have one name, Lord Easton, but the surname, when they're not being addressed as that member of nobility, would be an entirely other name.
Right. It can get
Say
really
what?
confusing.
And really, you did need a map to keep track of who was who.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, one book was set in London back, in the early 1800s, I guess. And I was being really finicky because she was being so specific about locations and going out this street and turning into that street. And at one point, I looked at a map of current London and said, these streets do not connect. And she wrote
Mm.
back and she said, that's right. Today they don't. In 1800 and whatever it was, they did. So she had done her full due diligence. She looked at the time
Yeah.
at the maps that were appropriate for the time.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that was wonderful.
Those original sources are amazing, and you can
Yeah.
find so many of them online now too. So it's
Yes.
yeah.
In Steel Ridge, all the information about the wolves.
Mm.
Was it red wolves? An
Yes, red
endangered
wolves.
species?
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't know. It was fascinating. So now when something about that does pop up in the news, I'm like, yeah, I knew that.
Well, Martha, let's start with the basics. All right, we're going to get real basic here. One of the first lessons I learned from you is the spelling of copy editor versus copy editing. It's it's like one
Perverse.
of the many ways in which the English language likes to mess with our minds, right? Since
Oh,
I see so many, or I shouldn't say so many, since I see copy editors spelled incorrectly in some acknowledgments from time to time, set us straight, would you?
well, last I checked Merriam-Webster, which is still the standard for the publishing industry, it is copy editor, two words. But the act of working on your book is copy editing. So I copy edit as a copy editor. English.
Yes.
Welcome to lunacy on wheels.
I know.
And the thing is that also, if you go back several editions of Merriam-Webster, it is entirely possible that copy editing used to be hyphenated.
Uh, yeah, yeah.
So, which, so you have to keep checking.
Yeah.
But it is perverse. It really is.
So we've got that. So as the profession, you, Martha, is copy editor, two words, and you have done
Copy edit.
copy editing for me. One
Yeah,
word, correct? All
correct.
right. Okay, we've
I
got
got
that
that
one.
sorted.
We got that sorted. We got that out of the way. Great. Um, so as far as copy editing on the fiction side, what genres have you worked with? Obviously, you've done historical romance for me, contemporary romantic suspense for me. What else do you do?
I've done, it turns out it's a genre of its own, supernatural
Okay.
romances, uh, supernatural fantasy. I've done sort of thrillers, some straight fiction that is not necessarily romance, science fiction. I was Anne McCaffrey's copy editor
Ah.
the last 10 years or so of her life.
Mm-hmm.
And I that was because I ran into her editor, Shelley Shapiro, in the halls at Random House, and she somehow topic came up of Anne McCaffrey, and I said, "Oh, you know, I love her books." And I said, "But did you know that a couple characters, their names changed between the first two books?" And she was like, "Really? You noticed that?" And after that, I was Anne's copy editor, and it was
Oh
wonderful.
gosh,
She
that's
was
amazing.
she was great. She really was. So yeah, so science fiction. The I've learned that I cannot work on horror or gore, explicit gore.
Okay.
It's, you know, I do, you know, action books where, you know, people are being blown up or whatever,
Yeah.
falling off cliffs. Fine, leave it vague and I'm good. But horror and psychological grossness, or any abuse of children,
Mm.
I can't, because I work by visualizing a tremendous
Mm-hmm.
amount.
Mm-hmm.
I have to see what's going on so that people are not talking to people who have left the room, that sort of thing.
Right.
And I don't want those pictures in my head.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
So that was I'm glad you mentioned what you're not comfortable with working on because that was going to be a follow-up question.
Yeah.
But you're open to thrillers,
Yeah.
any of that type of
Yes.
any other than horror and really graphic uh, gore and blood and things like that.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of murder, death, and mayhem in my romantic suspenses. So I know that
Yep.
you're all in with that. And I've had
I'm fine
serial
with that.
killers and things
Yeah.
like that. So
You know, I
but
don't
yeah,
mind a good
the
roundhouse kick,
extremes. It
but
sounds like the extremes, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't want to see the guts and
Mm-hmm.
entrails, and no, no, thank you. And real well-written horror will keep me up at night. So no, I don't
Uh,
want that either.
okay. All right. We'll scratch that one off your list.
Yeah.
So when an author submits a manuscript to you, what is one thing that they can do that would make your job easier? Or two or three things what would make your job easier?
Um, if they actually do have a list, say, of the spellings of the characters' names, that would be terrific, because oftentimes, as they're working on their 12th draft, and their 15th cup of coffee,
Mm-hmm.
there'll be a typo here and a typo there. Who can blame them? Uh, but it would help going in to know exactly how things are supposed to be spelled, so that I'm not wasting their time later
Mm-hmm.
asking about that. Um,
And it helps their
you know, and
pocketbook if we want to
when it
get
was,
really, really real about it, because the more time you spend figuring
yes,
that out, you work on an hourly basis, right?
correct.
So that would add up if they can just do a little bit of that ahead of time. That helps their pocketbook, it helps your time. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, I'm very conscious. I work now entirely for self-publishing writers. So nobody's rich.
Hmm.
And so I'm very conscious of trying not to waste their money. Um, when it was hard copy, I would have said, you know, for God's sake, please send it double spaced. Because sometimes you get things that were single spaced and you couldn't write in,
Yes. Yeah.
comments. It's like I'm sitting there writing, comments in the margin and like 5-point type, writing as tiny as I can to get in there. But that's long gone. I would just ask them to do maybe a spell check, although that's not sufficient
Yes.
because uh, you can get homonyms, whatever, two, two, and two, they're all
Mm-hmm.
spelled correctly,
Yeah.
but spell check's not going to tell you which one is the right one.
Right.
So
Okay. Yep.
um,
That's great.
I think that's it. Just if they can write it, leave it alone for a couple weeks, then go back and look at it again themselves, they're bound to pick up things.
Mm. Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
but that's
Okay.
about it going in.
All right.
Yeah.
So why don't you walk us through the process? Say I'm new to you. I got a referral from this great author, Tracey Devlyn, and I want to send you my manuscript for you to work on. You get my manuscript. What happens on your side?
Okay. Oftentimes people will say the manuscript is, 100,000 words, whatever the word count is, and want an estimate of how long it will take. So, a cost estimate that way. I
Hmm.
can't do that because there are manuscripts that I can, like yours, I can blow through 30 pages in an hour, no problem,
Hmm.
because you know how to write. It's wonderful. And there are some manuscripts that come in where I'm lucky to get through 10 pages in an hour. So what I often offer to a new writer is that I'll say, send me a couple chapters and tell me if you want to work for 1 or 2 hours. And I will go through and do what I do for the time limit you set and then send it back to you with a bill. And you'll see what I do, what I have done. Decide if my style suits you and if you're getting what you want out of it.
Hmm.
And we'll also see how many pages I got through in the 1 or 2 hours and go from there. So they have a better sense of what the ultimate cost will be. So say that's all worked out. Um, I ask if a book is going to be one of a series because I do a style sheet, uh, not only the language, especially in science fiction, there's always interesting language to the language, but a list of the names, place names, people names, how they're uh, uh, unusual words, if they're set in italics or all kinds of spelling issues and basic things like, spell out numbers 1 through 100, yada, yada.
Hmm.
But if it's going to be a series, as well, I keep character and plot notes so
Hmm.
that in one series, a scar was moved from one cheek to the other between books. Eye color changed in one book between page 5 and 27.
Yeah.
And in one notable series, a man who was killed in book number 1 was alive again in book number 3, which was really exciting. Resurrection. So if it's going to be a series, as I'm starting the first read, I'll be keeping the style sheet with names and notes on people. If it's not going to be a series, then I'm just doing a basic style sheet, which is a lot less time. Um, so I'll go through the first read, taking, writing down all the names and all that, and sometimes keeping basic notes of a timeline. I had one author tuck 11 days between Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve once. 11 days. But between that night and next mornings, they added up. So I keep a sense of timeline, which has often come in handy.
Hmm.
I like to make suggestions. I like to ask questions rather than imposing uh, my will on someone else's work. It's not my name on the book. I'm not on the cover. It's you. So yes, I do two reads. I guess I should have said
Yeah.
that at the
Yeah.
outset. I do two reads because invariably there will be something that is said or done, perhaps in the second half of the book, that conflicts with something
Mhm.
that was said or done in the first half. And I won't know that on the first read. So when I go back and do the second read, it's with the knowledge of what happens for the rest of the book. Um, and that has come in handy again. But also, you can't catch every single thing, or I can't
Mhm.
on one read because I'm doing so much. I'm taking the notes and reading for content and sometimes for believability or or doing fact checking. The phone rings, whatever. I'm going to miss stuff on the first read. So I do two of them. And then I'll just send it back to the writer. Uh, some writers, I've got one writer in particular, I would do the first read and it would be buried in queries and corrections and what have you. And I'd let her go through and answer the questions and make the corrections and send it back to me. And then
Mhm.
I would do the second read
Mhm.
so that she had the best possible version by the time I was done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, I get protective, they're my writers.
I remember doing something very similar with you. I think it was Searing Need, and that book gave me some trouble and some difficulty. And I remember talking to you about it. I'm like, I'm gonna go through your copy edits and everything, and there were some areas that had some very heavy additional editing based on your comments back to me.
Oh,
And I asked you to, just read through it again
of course.
afterwards. And you very kindly did that to me. And it was very helpful, and it gave me a lot
Yay.
more confidence that I
Good.
didn't introduce new typos and things like that. That was what that, because when you do editing after the copy editing, it can introduce new typos and
Oh, yeah.
issues and things like that, which you don't want. So
Yeah, but
that was good.
everybody does. And after a while, you have lived with a book for how many months and
Hmm.
you've gone through how many drafts. And at some point, you know everything that's in there
Yeah.
and you don't see what is actually on the page.
Hmm.
You just don't. I had a writer, there was a song that included a major clue to be solved for the resolution of the plot. He had rewritten it so many times.
Yeah.
He wrote out the clue and you couldn't see it because he had written it so
Oh,
many freaking
yeah.
times. And I,
Yeah. Yeah.
I understood. Because
Hmm.
he knew it so well. He didn't see that it wasn't on the page, which
Yeah.
is, that's my job.
One of the fun things that I'm assuming you do this with most authors, and it's not just me, where you tend to do a lot of your work in the evening, or I think, because it would never be unusual for me to receive the my copy edits at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Morning. Yeah,
Which was
it's
great
true.
because I would get up and there is my
It's
manuscript ready to
waiting.
go.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because my friend Adrian had always called me a vampire because I would be up late and up early, right? So, but I'm like, I have got nothing on Martha because my brain would be dead at 2 o'clock in the morning for sure. So kudos to you.
I've I've always been a night owl, and that was certainly exacerbated being a musician because you're out
Yeah, oh,
at a
sure.
gig till 1 o'clock in the morning, you get home at 2 and you're still a little jazzed, so you're up. Um, but it's also so much easier to work at night. The phone is not ringing,
Hmm.
and uh, the husband and child are peacefully asleep, so they do not need anything. Um, and it's quiet.
Hmm. Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, one of my final questions here is to talk about human copy editors versus what some of our AI options that we have as authors these days. So what, in your opinion, what makes a human copy editor invaluable in this age of AI?
A computer is not going to tag you on plot holes or little moments of, and then a miracle occurs. I will. Uh, many times when I've written to a writer and said, I'm sorry, I'm just not buying this. Uh, but an AI might, have it grammatically perfect, but they won't pick up on inconsistencies in relationships or a person's speech pattern suddenly and bizarrely changing, or a scar going from cheek to cheek. They also don't care about
Mm,
your work.
mm,
But and as we touched on earlier, a spell check usefulness is limited
mm,
because a word can be spelled perfectly and not be the right version of that
mm,
word. Uh, I don't know if the AI programs would do the fact checking. I've had people, have flowers blooming in whatever month in England that don't bloom in that month. I
mm.
am Dutch OCD, which is very handy. And I
It
will
is.
look that stuff up and make sure
Yeah.
that if they say they're walking out into a grove of tea roses in uh, in July, that they're actually blooming then, or that they grow in that part of England. I don't know. Anachronisms. There's another
Hmm.
one. Will I don't know if the AI programs will say this book is set in the 1800s and this word was not in use until 1915.
Hmm.
Um, I think that they can be handy. I'm not conversant really with the AI
Hmm.
aids that are available to writers as I haven't drawn upon them.
Hmm.
So they may do some other things wonderfully, but I don't think that they can truly backstop an author fully as a live copy editor will. Certainly not going from book to book
Hmm.
in a series.
Yeah.
So
No, that's great. And like I say, you and I have been together for a number of books over a number of years, and I've used those AI programs for different things, just to test them out to see
yeah,
what they're about. And so far, I have not come across one that does for me what you do for my manuscripts. And so, yeah, I want to just second that for the foreseeable future, I will definitely still be sending my manuscripts to a human copy editor, because, like you said, I value that you are invested in the success of my books.
yeah.
As much as I am, so I hold a great deal of value in that. So yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, you betcha.
I just I've done writing. I've done nonfiction writing. I've done a couple little biographies for kids. I tried writing a book, a mystery, and couldn't really plot a good one out. It's not in there. I can write a great 3-minute song, but I admire the ability. In Steel Ridge, you've created an entire world. This huge cast of characters, a town that you describe so clearly book to book that it feels real. You've peopled it with specific buildings and parks and roads and what have you. I think it's fabulous. It's so I'm thrilled when I'm allowed in the door there,
Yeah.
to take part in this.
Well,
It's,
that's
I don't take it for granted. It's not just a job, and I'm really fortunate that I do work that is not just a job.
mhm.
So I'm lucky.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad that you enjoy going back to Steel Ridge.
I do.
Adrian and Kelsey and I, we put a lot of hard work into creating that world. So it's nice to
Oh,
hear that
I
you enjoy
know.
going back there and
I do,
doing
and,
some of those
and I
visits.
wonder about them.
Yes.
You
What are
know,
they up to now?
I loved the character, and forgive me, I've forgotten his name, who is somewhere on the spectrum,
Ah, yes, yeah.
uh,
Shep.
who was created so fully
Mm-hmm.
as a person and simply integrated into the family and community. And it was so satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Shep Kingston and Kelsey Browning developed that character, and
Yeah,
she had some sensitivity readers that went through it to make sure that she had it all right. So he was he is was whatever a wonderful character. So yeah, I think that book might be our highest rated book at like 4.9 somewhere in there
yeah.
on the site.
It's
So
those character I haven't found another book with a similar character
uh,
who is um drawn so clearly that that fabulous lack of social graces, but the absolute honesty.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's wonderful to speak for that part of the population and for their families, for people who are
Hmm.
reading that book and who have a Shep in the family.
Hmm. Yeah.
To have him be a hero, to have him have the agency that he does and the expertise that he does. It's like, I don't have this part of the deck. I am brilliant with this part of the deck.
Yeah. What
That's
a
a
great way of, yeah,
gift.
that's a great way of thinking about it.
My husband taught Montessori for a number of years. And that was one thing that he would talk to the kids about is that everybody's got, a handful of cards. No one gets the whole deck.
Yeah, that's true. Dang it.
And so some kids are fabulous with math. He had
Yeah.
one boy in one of his classes who just had a mechanical gift. And if something in the class broke, he would turn around and hand it to him. And most of the time, the kid would fix it because
Ah.
that was where his gift lay.
Hmm.
Math, not so much, you know. It's like, and that's okay. It's okay. Not, school is the only time in your life when you have to be good at everything.
Mm, mm,
Everything.
mm.
You have to memorize for history. You have to conquer at least one language, often two. You have to be good at math. You have to be good in science. Uh, Everything across the board.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting perspective. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This was so much fun, getting a chance to actually talk to you with your lovely face there, where I can see it, and
Yeah.
not through email and things like that, which is fine because you have a great sense of humor. But it's wonderful to connect with you face to face, as it were. So,
It is.
um,
And I
yeah, like I
love
said, I
seeing
hope we.
you in this attic room with books
Oh.
all around. It looks like heaven.
It is. It's my happy place for sure.
Good. I like thinking of you in a happy place.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that the storm pretty much passed you by.
Yeah, we were really lucky in this area. Martha's talking about the Hurricane Helene that passed through parts of North Carolina, and I'm in the foothills here, so we got the wind and down trees, but we didn't get the flooding, which I'm thankful for, but very sad that not everybody was quite as lucky as we were.
Yeah.
But we're everybody's getting on their feet, day by day. So it's you know it's I
are
don't, I
there
want to say
still
good because I know there's still some people who aren't whole yet, but
are there
uh, it,
still groups that people can contact if they want to continue to help in North Carolina?
oh yes, absolutely. There's quite a few organizations, and it just depends on kind of what your preferences are as far as how you want to help. But there's definitely if you jump on my Facebook page, I've got some links out there that people can go to, or you can go to the city of Asheville or Black Mountain. There's just Red Cross is a good one. I saw them everywhere. I
Good.
lots of opportunities for people
I
to help
figured
out
I'd
if
put in
they.
a plug just to,
I appreciate it. They
hey,
appreciate it. Well,
uh,
many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Undercurrents of Romance. You can find more information about the show at tracydevlyn.com/podcast. Undercurrents of Romance is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'll be back soon with another great romantic read. In the meantime, enjoy the venture, everyone. Bye, Martha.
bye bye.